Good afternoon, everyone. And this is video number 5 in Power BI snippet. And we are continuing our star schema introduction part 2 video. In this video, we are about to add a supporting file to create the second dimension table. So as per our previous video, we just built our age group table. Now we are about to build the country or continent table here. Let's see how to do that. In our previous video, I've given you a logic that we are about to add this data from our data folder where we will see the country text file is given to us. This is the supporting file that we are about to use to build our region or regional dim table. So let's see how to do that. So we already have in our data that the dim age in the population table that we have already created it. I didn't do any visualization as such, but we will be doing a visualization in this list. Let's come back to the home tab and go back to our transform tab. And in our previous video, I said that we will be creating a duplicate table. So in the last table, when I created a dim table, I used the right click option of it and I used the referential table. And I'll show you why we use the referential table in our when we create our reporting. Now I'm going to use a duplicate table. So when I do the duplicate table, it's going to give you the same point. Now I'm going to just rename it as dim continent table. And I renamed the table right now as dim continent table. And according to my list here, I need only 3 logics: country ID, country, and region. But here I have a lot of data, so I'm going to just uncheck the unwanted data here. I'm going to keep the country ID and country. I'm going to keep these 2 columns. The rest of them I do not want it. I'm going to give an OK. So now I got my list here. Now I wish to add one more dimension here or bring in another data so that I can add the continent list. So I'll come back to the list of data here, and this is a text file. So I'll come back to the list and I'm going to add this. When I add this file, it will show a very different data for me. But before I want to see it inside a Power BI desktop, I wish to see them as a normal text file. So let's see how to do that. So I'm going to just cancel this, minimize this data, and as well as that Power BI, open this in a normal window. You can see that this is giving you 5 different columns, but when I try to do that in a Power BI desktop, it shows only 2 columns. So let me just add and show you like this. So how do I do that? The reason why it didn't show me the 5 data breakup is because when I've imported this data, the system took it as a fixed delimited width. So the delimiter in a text functionality or in a text file is a tab. But if you see on top, the delimiter was fixed. So if I convert this into a tab, automatically you can see that 5 columns appears exactly how it has appeared in my text file too. So now I'm going to just pull this data inside. So when I give an OK, automatically it adds the country and the continent part. Again, here I'm so keen to add only or keep only 2 different data here. One is the CC and another one is my hashtag point. I'm going to rename them a little later. I don't want other columns. I'm going to just choose it. And I'm going to uncheck what are the columns that I don't need it. Then I'm going to switch this to the left and I'm going to call this as country ID. And this is my continent code. But what I'm looking forward is the continent name here. But unfortunately, I have only the code here. So I'm about to use one more dimension in my home tab that is called enter data. So to create a 7 or 8 continent that I have in here, so I need to take this data into consideration. To do that, I'm going to just momentarily do this functionality, but I'm going to revoke this function to get this data back again. So I'm going to just go back to the remove row and I'm going to remove all the duplicate rows in here. So that shows only the continent which is once in my list. So I'm going to give a right click here, copy it. Then I'll add the enter data and I'm going to paste it. So now I'm going to name this as continent table, and I'm going to add the continent name here. This is going to be Asia, Europe, Antarctica, Africa, Oceania. Correct. Forgive me if I'm giving a wrong spelling in here. So now I got my 8 continents. I just try to add this ZZ here. If you don't want that line, you can happily delete that. Then I can just add this line alone. So now I got my list here, and I have a new table called continent table. But what I want is I want to add this continent name to this data. So now, as I said earlier, I'm going to keep this as a momentary component. Then I'm going to remove it again. So I'm going to just say remove duplicates. So all my data will be removed. So restore the data. In my earlier version, if I want to add a row, a multiple rows, then I use append query. But now I'm going to add a column here to the existing data. So I'm going to use the logic called merge query. So when I go to merge query, I have 2 dimensions. One is merge query and merge query is new. If it is a new one, then it creates a brand new table for me, but I'm going to add an existing column, or I'm going to add in an existing column, a new column to a list. So whatever table that I have here, based on this column, I'm going to bring the name of the continent. So I'm going to add another column right next to the continent code. So I'm going to go back to the merge query. Then I'll ask you a question, how you want to merge it. So based on these data, I'm going to merge it. So now we can see that all my data are almost matching, only with the 2 of them are not matching it. That's fine. Okay. Then I'm going to extract this, and I'm going to keep the continent name alone in exist. I'm going to uncheck the continent code and the bottom line called use original column name as prefix. When I give an OK, it adds all the list here. Again, I will be having a blank field here. So let's see what is the blank field that I have. What are the 2 different countries which shows a blank? So it shows the country code as null and is that. So I don't think that I need those 2 logics. So I can remove those data too. So if I don't feel that I don't need that 2 reports, I can definitely remove it. So I'm going to just say remove the blank rows. So now I don't think I'll be having the list. Okay, I didn't remove the blank. So let me just remove the error row. Just do I have a blank here? Yes. Okay, right. Let me just remove the null itself. So come down here, add the nulls. So I'm going to delete these rows. So let me find and replace it. So I can remove the rows in this list. So I'm going to just uncheck the null. Okay, now there is no null will be there in the list. Perfect. So now I want to add this continent name to my continent table. So I'm about to add this based on the numbers available here. So I'm going to go back to this point, and I will add a merge query, and I'm going to take the continent list, select these 2 logic. Most of the data will be added here, and probably we'll not get some matches here. So let's see what are the matches that we are not getting it here in here. So when I give an OK, so almost all the data are added here. So likewise, the earlier part, I'm going to just keep the continent name alone in existence, and I want to see whether all my data are loaded. So I can see a null value comes in here. So let me see where the null values are. So I have Sudan comes with a null and Channel Islands. So now I cannot add two different logics. I'm going to replace all of them with a particular point wherever I have a null. So it is a case sensitive. Please be careful. And I'm going to give Africa as a name of the list. Now I can just, okay, right. I think that okay, perfect. So now I'm going to just take this off so that the filter will go off. Now I'm going to find out my null, and then I'm going to give Africa. So what I did in the earlier part is I just filtered the null and then gave the list. So it has only filled the African part. Now when I load it, you can see all the names will be there. There will not be any null value in my list. Now I'm going to create 3 different visualization for us to understand our data better. So I'm going to give an OK. So before I start loading this data, so you can see that now I have 5 tables, but according to my standard data, I need to have only 3 tables here, because the other 2 tables that I've built in here is for the building purpose of this continent. So I don't need this anymore. So I can uncheck this. I can stop this not to load in my desktop. So I'm going to give a right click here. I'm going to say uncheck the enable load. Then I'm going to give a right click here and check the enable load. So now all my data, I'm going to load it to my list. When I do that, automatically you can see that in my Power BI desktop, I'll be added with one more new table called dim continent. That is dimension table continent. I should have given a D continent or D age, but I want to just specify it as dim age and dim continent. So I've specified them in that way. So now I can see that I have one more table added to my list. If I try to build a population table now, so I'm going to create 3 different charts in one sheet and then put them separately also. So I'm going to add 4 pages here. My first page is going to have all the 3 of the data. So first I'm going to take the population table. I'm going to go for a country wise population. Immediately takes a visualization map for me. It's too tough to read the top 10 country here. So I'm going to change this to staked column chart. And it shows almost all the countries here, but I'm not going to use all the countries. I'm going to filter the top country alone. So I'm going to go back to the filter. I'm going to go to the country and I'm going to do the advanced filter called top 10 country by population and apply it. So it's going to give you the top 10 country for me. If you want to add the data label to it, you can go back to the format below the visualization, add the data label. And if you want the size of the data label to be increased, then you can increase it to maybe 12 or 14. So I'll make it as 12 so that will look, I think, decent. So now I got my numbers and got the first population table, and I'm going to make the header in the center. So I'm going to bring the title and make the title into the center and make it 16. Now I would like to bring in the permutation combination of data. So what I want is I want the dim age category and the population. So I'm going to add a category here and a population in the below. So you can see automatically it gives you the answer from you. And I'm going to change this to a bar diagram. You can see the bar diagram comes in place. I'm going to make them into half and go back to our normal point, add the data label, change the font size to 14. I think 12 is nice. Perfect. If I try to do the same with the continent table, my answer will show in a weird way. So I'm going to say continent name wise population. And I'm going to change this to a diagram. It all shows the same population kind because the system is not showing me the right answer. The reason why is in the model, the dim table and the country table would have been joined, but the continent table is separate. because I've created this with a referential table. I've created this with the duplicate component. So I'm going to create the country ID and add the data. Once if I do that, automatically my visualization window will also change. So earlier it showed all of them as singular line. Now it shows perfectly. Now I can come back here, add the data label and change the data label to 12. Let me make the colors of the data better. So to do that, I'm going to go to this point and change the color here. Let me come back here. I'll change the color to something else. So I'll come back here and change the data color to, so now I got all my data. So now I want to put them in 3 different sheets. Copy this, go back to your sheet 2, paste it here, make it bigger so that the data looks much more better. Then come back to this point, add this list, copy this and paste it here. And finally, I'm going to do the third part, copy this and paste it to the last line. My first logic was perfect because it comes in the center. So now I want to change the other logics here. So I'm going to come back here to the third part and go to the visualization, change the title to the center part and make it 16. Same way, next file, title, center, 16. If you want to do this even for the first chart, you can do that because all the charts will look similar when we do something like that, so that the presentation will look better. So now I got my list. Now I'm going to export this particular 4 different sheets as a PDF. So I'll come back to the file, export to the PDF. Then automatically my data will be exported. You can see that once it is exporting the first sheet, the second sheet will go on. Then we'll go to the third sheet, then we'll go to the fourth sheet, and it creates 4 different sheets in a single PDF for us. So now I already have a PDF earlier. So you can see that it adds one more PDF to my list here. This is the report that I can forward to my management. So this is how we will create the star schema and create the dimension, and as well as we can build our report and even make the report ready in a PDF so that it can be forwarded to others so that they can use this data for the betterment. Hope you have learned something new in Power BI Desktop with visualization in it and how to export the visualization also. This is Vinod signing out from Myself Academy and Power BI Desktop. Snippet your YouTube channel and please subscribe it, share it, learn more, and add as many new topics as you want or as many questions as you want so that I can add multiple topics for us. This is Vinod signing out again. Thank you so much. Bye bye.